What's going on, Pack-A-Day members? Check, check, check. Think it's on. Still can't believe I did that yesterday. Welcome in to our members only Q&A. Thank you so much for being here. If you are not a member and you are watching this, that means that you are watching it after the fact, which I do try to open it up, try to make so that as much stuff as possible is, little perks for members, obviously. Hopefully, I think we're going to have Aaron Nagler and I again doing members content this season that will be out there for members only, the members only Q&A, early access to videos and things like that. But always obviously want you to have that opportunity as well. So if you're listening to this after the fact, check out those memberships. But for those of you who are here live, I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to get to all of your questions today. And I was already skimming through some of the ones that are out there, and it looks like we have some good ones in there already. And I think this is a great place to start. So Chicken asks, is Valentine poised for a breakout? I love this question. The first thing that I want to say is we all love the idea of breakout players, right? It's so fun. It's so exciting. It's so enticing. It's also extremely rare. You will get some that will break out from time to time. That does happen. But for the most part, players are good football players. Some are average, some are below average, but there are very rare great players or extraordinary players. I think we already know that Carrington Valentine's a good corner. Like, he is a good, solid NFL corner that is capable of starting for what I think is pretty much any team in the league. And I think he has that ability. I think now the question for Valentine is, can there be that upside? Can he show consistency? And can he go out there for a 17-game season and do it at an incredibly high level? I think the answer for me is yes. And I don't say that lightly because, again, I know how difficult that is. It's a very tough position to play. You're inherently more off, even if you give up a handful of plays a game, people are going to remember that in the negative. That's what sticks in their head. I'm a big Carrington Valentine believer. I have seen now, since he's come in as a rookie to training camp right now, the playmaking potential that he has, the instincts that he can play with, he has it. He really, really does. I really, truly believe that he does, in fact, have some sort of special trait or quality that makes it so that he can be a special player in this league. I think the last couple things for Carrington, maybe the biggest one, is to just start trusting that, to no longer think that he might be good enough, but to know that he's good enough and to just trust those instincts because he has them. I think he's put on, some muscle. He looks more physical out there on the field. I'm sure he had that Dallas Goedert playing over and over in his head on numerous occasions. I'm sure he doesn't want something, like that to happen again. He's been fantastic so far. I mean, some of his individual reps, just the ability to press at the line of scrimmage, and again, showing off a little bit more of that physicality. I love the way that he's playing out there. So what level of breakout we get from Valentine, I think that's what remains to be seen. I'll be pretty surprised if he's not better. I think he's earned himself a legitimate, real big-time role within this defense, and I think he can really go out there and make some big-time plays this upcoming season. Now the question is it a small jump, good, solid starter, or is it a bigger jump where we're talking about Carrington Valentine as having 6-7 interceptions, maybe a pick 6 in there, and really becoming the playmaker that I really, truly believe that he can become? I think that's going to be the big question. And just like Jordan Love is in the third year as a starter, and I know it's different because Love had some time to sit back or whatever. A lot of times for players like this with Carrington Valentine, it's the same thing. That third year, you're getting to the point now where you are who you are in this league. Like, this is probably the time where you're going to take a jump, or it's probably just not going to happen. And you've probably plateaued, and that's who you're going to become. There's rare exceptions, but that's usually more of the rule. So I'm excited for Valentine. I've loved what I've seen so far. I'm hopeful, but just remember, these breakout, these huge jumps, they're rare, but I do think Valentine is capable of it. I know there's a lot of injuries to teams early in camp, but it seems like this year there's a ton of bad injuries, 2 to 3 month injuries and hospitalizations. There have been some for sure. I know what the Browns had an Achilles injury to one of their corners earlier today. There have been a couple hospitalizations that have been out there. I just think the only thing I'll disagree with here, Chicken, is I think this is pretty common. You're going to end up with some ACLs. You're going to end up with some Achilles. And if this might sound like a strange thing to say, I'm actually fairly amazed that by the end of the season, there aren't more ACL injuries. If you, Justice and I have talked about this. If you look around youth sports right now, and the younger and younger that players are playing sports year round and playing a variety of different sports and maybe not having that time off their bodies. And if you want to continue to play at the highest level, even in middle school and high school, like you've got to be practicing nonstop and you've got to be consistent with your game. Like there's more and more wear and tear as you get it. I was talking to Justice, I think on one of the episodes, there was, I think the Brewers, I think actually one of the top pitchers that was taken in this last draft, but I think the Brewers like second or sandwich pick or whatever it was, they announced it and he's like, yeah, he's already had Tommy John surgery. He's coming out of high school. Like, yeah, he had Tommy John surgery in high school. It's like, I'm sorry, what? He had Tommy John surgery already in high school? I'm actually fairly amazed that we get through the NFL season and there's not more of these ACLs, MCLs, Achilles just popping, because you have so much wear and tear from youth football to NFL. There is an unbelievable amount of stress with the 4.240s at their size, height, weight that they are putting on that, and then doing it so consistently through the course of the year, not to mention that they're battling with players across from them that are the same height, weight, speed as they are. It's a really brutal sport. So no, I'm I have seen a lot of these injuries, and I know it's not just Achilles and ACLs and things like that, but no, I'm not surprised that those injuries are out there, and it's just an unfortunate aspect of the game. It's a cruel sport on your body, and it's a violent game, and you've got to find a way to, sort of find a way to survive it, for lack of a better term. And hopefully a lot of these players and a lot of these teams, we can avoid as many injuries as possible. I don't care if it's the Bears, the Vikings, the Lions, it doesn't matter to me. I want all 32 teams to go out with their best players, and I want to see who the best team is. I don't want it to, any team to win because the team across from them is missing best players. We all want to see our favorite players and the best players out there performing at the highest of levels. And we want the Packers to beat the Vikings with Justin Jefferson, to beat the Lions with Amon-Ra St. Brown, to beat the Bears with DJ Moore, and et cetera, et cetera. You get the point. So I don't want any injuries, and hopefully we can avoid as many as possible throughout the course of this season. Happy Tuesday, Andy. Happy Tuesday to you as well, Mike McGee. Thanks for all the coverage of camp and the content overall. I'm starting to get more optimistic about the season's prospects and regaining that division crown. It is that time of year when hope springs eternal. I'm excited as well. The defense has me pretty amped up, although, I'm trying to pump the brakes as best as possible for myself, because this is, again, the time of year where defense is ahead of offense, but I've really enjoyed what I've seen so far. I think that there is a tenacity to this defense that is a little bit different, a little bit more amped up. And I think this team in general has a lot of talent on it. So looking for them to take that jump, hopeful, but there's a lot of season. There's a lot of even preseason left to be played. And we'll see where this team can be when it needs to be at its best, hopefully at the end of the season. Shane, seems like we're going to need a few extra roster spots for wide receiver and linebacker. Do we go with just 2 tight ends? Seems like Kraft and Musgrave can handle it with practice squad call-ups if necessary. Yeah, I haven't looked at a 53, sort of roster projection for myself since I think after minicamp. So maybe like after that first preseason game or something like that, we'll throw one out there just to kind of see where things are trending right now. Sometimes this stuff takes care of itself inherently. You get a couple injuries or whatever may happen, and that may fix the problem in and of itself. It's interesting. I don't think they need an extra roster spot for wide receiver, by the way. I think 6 is probably plenty for the time being with Christian Watson on the PUP list to start the season. I think that probably goes to Hardman as the 6th over Malik Heath, but Malik Heath is certainly battling for it. And now one less wide receiver with Bo Melton no longer, kind of battling for that spot. So I think 6 is probably going to be enough. Could they go with 2 tight ends? I'm actually say probably not on this one. I guess if you could get Sims and Fitzpatrick back, maybe, but my guess is they keep one of those guys. It's tough to go into a game. And I know what you're saying of like practice squad call-ups, but you only get so many of those. It could buy you some time. Again, if Sims and Fitzpatrick both come back, maybe even Swinson, maybe they feel good about 3 of those guys, put all 3 on the squad. And you know what? I think you get 3 weeks of call-ups for both or for any of them. So, that could maybe get you through 9 weeks of the season before you actually have to put a 3rd guy on there. You could try something like that. My guess is there's a third tight end, either Fitzpatrick, Swinson, Ben Sims, or maybe even somebody that they claim off of another roster. As far as linebacker goes, I think that's another one where you probably feel okay with five. We'll see if they want to keep Welch or Jamon Johnson, but I think they can probably get away with five. Colin Oliver might have a lot to do with that as well. If he comes back before the end of preseason and you feel like you not only have an extra edge rusher, but that he can give you some off-ball linebacker as well, that could give you that extra motivation to maybe move on from Jamon Johnson, Christian Welch, and go with just five linebackers. So we'll see. Again, I haven't looked at all sort of the roster gymnastics quite recently to see where this is maybe stacking up at the moment, but I think they'll be able to navigate that. And like I said, sometimes those conversations take care of themselves inherently before the end of preseason and before you have to make those final cut downs. Seth, I think I'm paying more attention to training camp this year, so this might be recency bias, but are things a little chippier than usual? I'm excited for this mentality during the season. I don't think so as of yet. There actually hasn't been any sort of fight through training camp as of yet. You know, we had the Hobbs thing. It escalated, just ever so slightly to Zach Tom kind of getting in the face, and they again moved, Hobbs out for a couple plays. That was about it for that camp or that practice. There was none really the 3 days, 4 days prior. What are we on now? And then today there was a little bit at the end between Rasheed Walker and Brenton Cox or Kingsley Nigbari. But that was really kind of a Rasheed Walker thing. It felt like more than anything else. And again, I thought for the rest of practice, there wasn't there's no like fight that broke out or, skirmish or scuffle or anything like that. So I don't know that I'm willing to go quite that far. I do like the physicality and the intensity that both sides are playing with, but it does feel like overwhelmingly it is positive. It is the right sort of physicality and intensity with just a couple little things here and there that need to get cleaned up. And certainly Matt was not happy about that today, understandably. And I'm sure they'll kind of get some of that cleaned up as we go forward here. Tristan, do you think last offseason when reports came out to say that the Packers felt they had an all-pro center on the roster, they were referring to Jenkins and not Tom? No, I think it was Rob Domofsky who had that report, and specifically it was about Zach Tom. I just think this is the Green Bay Packers. They love their versatility. They love players who can play multiple spots. Brian talked about it again today with Isaiah Simmons, and one of the things that attracted them to Simmons is his versatility out on the field on defense. They love offensive linemen that can play a plethora of different spots along that line. Elton Jenkins, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, just being able to play at least 4 positions, pretty much each of them, that gives them so much ability to move people around if they need to. And Zach Tom has gone through that. He's played left guard, right tackle. I think even maybe a little bit at left tackle in his career so far. Jenkins has played 4, I think probably all 5 spots in his career in the NFL. We'll see where kind of Jordan Morgan eventually ends up. But my guess is he gets kind of moved around throughout the course of time. This is just what Green Bay does. They love that versatility. But no, I do think that they were referring to Zach Tom, but I think they also think very highly of Elton Jenkins and his ability to play center. And I think they're hoping that he can play at that upper echelon as well, at minimum at a potential Pro Bowl level if he plays at the top of his game this upcoming season. I love this question, Big Bay Blue. Was it a bad career move for Bo Melton to switch positions? Wide receiver is deep in Green Bay, but he seems good enough to play somewhere. Let me preface this by saying I love Bo Melton. All right. I think he's a really fun wide receiver. And I mean, I do think that he probably could have carved out maybe a spot on a roster. Bo Melton, as is at wide receiver, this is going to sound harsh, but probably if he just stayed at wide receiver, probably would have had a couple years left at wide receiver, maybe like an Equanimous St. Brown type of role where he gets some spots as like a number 6 guy, bounces around some practice squads. Maybe 2 is a little bit slim. Maybe it's 2, 3, maybe 4, but he's a fringe roster practice squad guy. And there's probably not an upside above and beyond that. Right. And when that's the case, there is a limit to your longevity in the league. There's a limit to, again, how many times people are going to be willing to give you chances. And again, you might end up a lot more on practice squads than you end up on actual rosters. And wide receiver throughout the NFL is a very deep position. There's super talented players coming in at wide receiver all the time. And it just makes it very, very tough if you are not one of those top 3 or 4 guys to get one of those big contracts or to have any sort of job security at the position. So I think him taking a flyer that maybe he can go out and play some special ball in the secondary And I think that does a couple different things. Number one is, what if it's just a natural fit for him and he looks really good doing it? I do think the wide receiver depth in the NFL is far greater than the corner depth in the NFL at the moment. He could elongate his career just with that alone. Also, there's always the chance that it just sticks and he's really good at it. Again, Sam Shields is a different story because he switched in college, but something like that where he makes that change. He's got the ball skills, he's got the speed, and all of a sudden he can play that position and it's a real fit. And all of a sudden he gets a real opportunity to not only stick on a roster, but maybe play consistently in somebody's secondary. So there's always the chance that that could happen. If that doesn't happen, I think what Brian, I forget if it was Matt or Brian said it today, but they reiterated that Bo is not out completely as a wide receiver in the long term. They just know already what Bo can do as wide receiver, and they've basically just kind of put a pause on that. So if they get to the season and he's on the 53 and they need a wide receiver for a game, they're not going to hesitate to go and still put him at wide receiver. That was the indication that we got today. But they wanted now him to focus solely on corner to see what they have there, if they can make something out of it, and to give him that opportunity to maybe make the roster as a corner. But even if that doesn't fully click as a corner, meaning that he becomes a starting caliber or like a number 4 corner in the NFL, what it can do for him overall is elongate his career because he has the potential to be a really unique piece for any team. If I'm putting together a team, and especially if it's a team that is either, competing at a high level or even just, you're looking for unique pieces on the back end of your roster, bringing a player who on game day on your 48-man roster can play all 4 special teams units, the main ones, kick returner, punt returner, meaning he's on those units, not that he's the primary kick returner, punt returner, but on the kick return team, the punt return team, the kick coverage team, and the punt coverage team, and be a core guy in all 4 of those. Not to mention he's also being used now a little bit as a field goal block guy. Like you're talking about somebody who's on basically all of your special teams units. That has so much value. And now he's got the ability to be on game day, maybe my number 5 corner and my number 5 wide receiver. That is so valuable for a team on game day when you maybe want to stack positions elsewhere or when you've got some injuries building up. Just somebody that I have on my roster that can be a depth piece on both offense and defense and give me all that special teams value. I think this is adding to his resume and adding to his ability to make a roster, not deterring from it. So it might limit his upside long-term as a wide receiver, but it's possible that had already plateaued anyway. So it's an interesting move. If I were him, I probably would have done the exact same thing. And again, I do think that this gives him the ability to put some more things on his resume that makes him more valuable to teams as they look to maybe keep him on a roster in Green Bay's case or pick him up in case Green Bay were to release him. All right. If Green Bay has been the Packers, if quarterback has been the Packers magic position over the last 35 years, what's the second most charmed position? Wide receiver, safety, tackle. All right. Over the last, 35 years? All right. Let's think through this. It's certainly not tight end. Actually, no, I know the answer already. This is actually pretty easy. It's got to be center. And maybe there's another one that I'm just forgetting. But to me, going from Frank Winters, and I'm going to forget some in here, so forgive me. But the Frank Winters, Scott Wells, Mike Flanagan, I might have those 2 flipped. Corey Linsley, J.C. Treader, although much maligned as of late, but J.C. Treader's in there as well. That group specifically, I mean, Green Bay had consistent center play for so freaking long. And I know there was a little, maybe blip with Josh Myers over the last few years, but now you got Elton Jenkins at that spot as well. I mean, you're looking at a 35-year run where you had one really bad Jeff Saturday experience for a year and, a few years of Josh Myers that was, below average, and everything else you had really great center play for a really long period of time. So that would probably be my initial reaction to that. Again, I'd have to go through all of them and figure that out and chat. If you want to disagree with me or make a case for something else, I would love to hear it. But my initial reaction would be center. You could certainly make, tackle is a great one as well. Yeah, I would think you would have to maybe go like a left tackle. maybe going back to like what Bruce Wilkerson, Ken Rutgers, Bruce Wilkerson, Chad Clifton to David Bakhtiari. And then again, you're maybe at left tackle taking a slight dip there when you go to like a Rasheed Walker from that. And, Yash Nyman a little bit in there as well. But left tackle, pretty dang good as well. But I'm going to think, I think my final answer is going to be center here. But make your arguments in chat for sure. What would be your very early wideout room to make the 53? I think this is easy at the moment. Barring injury, Christian Watson on the PUP list. You've got the main four: Golden, Wicks, Dobbs, Reed. Savion Williams is a lock to make the roster. And then I think McCole Hardman's your 6. And I think that's probably just it. I think you do everything in your power to try to get Malik Heath back on the practice squad so that you can call him up in any given moment. And then I think McCole Hardman probably becomes your top punt returner, which then you have to make the determination of, do you want to keep 6 wide receivers active on game day, or do you go with 5 and maybe deactivate a Savion Williams until he's a little bit more of a finished product that's ready to go out there and play a little bit more. So I think that's where I would lean right now, but a lot of time left. Malik Heath has had a pretty solid camp so far, so he's still trying to do everything that he can. I don't think there's any receivers behind Malik Heath that at the moment have that opportunity to crack the 53-man roster. I know everyone likes Sam Brown at the moment, but he, to me, his ceiling this year would be a practice squad player. So to me, this is a final spot between either keeping just 5 or keeping Hardman as a 6 or Malik Heath as your 6. And I don't really think there's an opportunity. I would be surprised at least if they kept 7. So 5 are easy. And then that's just the final spot between Hardman and Heath. And I would lean towards McCole Hardman at the moment. Ralph, thank you so much for the super chat. Going to Packers Bengals, top places to go in Green Bay. I would highly recommend checking out my training camp video from a couple of years ago that details all the restaurants, places to go, things to see, Packers related things to do in Green Bay. There's like a 25-minute video out there of like things to do during Packers training camp, something to that extent. See if I always post this when I can, but give me 1 second here. See if I can find it quick. Here it is. It's called The Complete Guide to Packers Training Camp. I will post the link in the chat for you. But you can get everything to do kind of around Green Bay, restaurants, all of that stuff, best old fashioned, whatever you're looking for, I've got in that full breakdown. So it's training camp related from a couple of years ago, but it covers you for game days as well. I will also, by the way, as of right now, Ralph, my plan of attack right now is to actually be in the stands for that game as a fan as well. Could change, but as of right now, that is the plan. J Love looks 5 years older, true veteran aura. There's definitely been an aura, as you mentioned, and or just a vet presence about J Love. It was eerily evident in OTAs and minicamp. And it was one of those things where it was like, you just saw like everything right before your eyes of like, oh my God, like it's year 6 already for Jordan Love. It's his 3rd year as a starter. And you could just tell the calm, and you watched all these, like that first, I don't think we had OTAs or mini camps, right? Because it was COVID, but that first training camp, you saw him, and and even the second one, just so many checkdowns, felt so uncomfortable. And then just over time, now you just get this massive veteran presence from Jordan. So no, it's been really fun to watch, and he's really kind of coming into his own, and you can get that veteran aura, as you mentioned, from him. So yeah, he does have much more of a veteran presence out there at camp this year. Make us feel better about Lloyd. Well, I've got multiple pieces of good news for you. The first one is that Josh Jacobs was asked about MarShawn Lloyd. This is per John Miller with NBC 26. He's going to be all right, man. He's not about to miss much time. I don't really know the extent of his injury, but I know it's nothing major, so he's going to be all right. So that is from Josh Jacobs on MarShawn Lloyd. Also, it's a groin injury. So groin injuries suck. They can definitely take some time to recover, but we're not talking hamstring, ACL, MCL, anything like that. So not that it's ideal, not that it's perfect, but per Josh Jacobs, it sounds like he's going to be back sooner rather than later, and that it's no long-term sort of injury for MarShawn Lloyd. And the other thing I'll say too is he was playing very, very well prior to that injury. So hopefully he can get back quick and get back to playing at the level that he was at. He was very clearly the second best running back in camp, and it wasn't particularly close. He looked dynamic. All right, Evan, first trip ever to Wisconsin Lambeau for the Bengals game. Another Bengals guy that's coming to the game. Have you ever eaten at Apollon in Appleton? I have not. What's a good park on the water to visit Saturday before I hit up the Packers Hall of Fame? A good park on the water to visit. You're talking in Appleton or Green Bay? I don't know that I have an answer for either. For parks on the water, um, there's not a ton of parks right on the water in Green Bay, unless I'm drawing a blank on something. I do like the River Walk, which is not a park, but it's a fun little river walk right on the Bay of Green Bay. You have to go more north. Bayshore Park. Bayshore Park is a park on the water that I enjoy going to, but it's a little bit of a trek. It's probably about 20, 25 minutes north of Green Bay. But yeah, it's unfortunate. There's not a ton of, beachfront sort of Green Bay area parks on the water. So my apologies for that off the top of my head. But Bayshore Park, if you're looking to maybe take a little bit of a trek, would be one that you could certainly look into. Ian Ewing, would it surprise you if Golden led the team in yards or receptions? Thanks for all the hard work, Andy. Lightning fingers out there during practice tweeting. You're more than welcome for that, Ian. And nothing would surprise me at wide receiver just because I think you're going to have to split the pie so many ways that you're going to end up with some pretty equal pieces and some just being slightly bigger than others. So between Wicks, Dobbs, Reed, Golden, I think you're going to see all of them end up with similar sort of targets, similar sort of receptions, similar sort of yards. And if you told me that Golden was the one that ended up with slightly more receptions, slightly more yards, slightly more touchdowns, I wouldn't be super stunned by that. Also, all you need is like Golden being able to play 17 games. And if, Dobbs plays 14 and Wicks plays 12 and Reed plays, 15, but Golden just gets more time out there, he could inherently get the advantage there as well. So wouldn't stun me, but I think these numbers for the receivers are going to be, again, pretty similar when it comes to targets. And then it ends up just being which one is the most efficient with it. But he looks really good so far. He looks like he's going to get a lot of opportunity and certainly a lot to be excited about with Matthew Golden so far. I just noticed today that we play Dallas. It's on Sunday Night Football. We get to embarrass them in their own home on prime time. That's the hope, Chicken. That is absolutely the hope. Do you think that Cooper is not being talked about as much because his high-level play has become relatively normal, or is he having a quiet camp? No, I think he's playing well. I think every single practice you get about 2 plays where he just shoots through the line and makes a ridiculous play behind the line of scrimmage. Those are just becoming a little bit more status quo. I think sometimes, so think about this logically, right? As a linebacker in training camp, those plays where he gets to shoot through the line, those are fun. And like I said, you get a couple of those per day. He had a blitz off the edge today where he would have had a sack. But unless you're coming up with an interception, what are we going to tweet about for Edgerrin Cooper, right? Other than, again, maybe those plays where he shoots through the line. You can't tackle anyone. A linebacker's job is primarily to tackle. Like they're racking up 100+ tackles throughout the course of the season, getting guys to the ground. That is the primary job. And if you look at like an all-pro, linebacker, it's like 150, 160 some tackles or whatever the case may be. And then it'll be what, like 4 sacks, 5 interceptions, or maybe those are flipped, 3 forced fumbles, a few fumble recoveries, something like that. They stack those a little bit, but you're not talking about, 8 or 9 interceptions. You're not talking about, 7 forced fumbles or, 15 sacks from that. That's just not what we're talking about, right? So I just think inherently it's a little bit tougher for an off-ball linebacker to consistently get talked about in camp because there's no tackling, especially for the ones. There were some 2s and 3s that got to go through tackling drills today, but Edgerrin Cooper is not going to be out there doing any tackling drills. So no, he looks good. You should be excited about Edgerrin Cooper still, but just I think a little bit inherently tougher to make splash plays at linebacker, and especially in camp when you're not allowed to tackle anybody. Has Tyron Hopper been flashing during practice? I've really liked what I've seen from Tyron Hopper and the linebacker group in general. Again, Cooper's look good. Hopper's look good. Isaiah Simmons has looked good. Even McDuffie, I think, is doing everything that he's supposed to be doing as well. But no, Hopper is definitely taking a step. And I don't know that he's in that starting conversation or anything like that. But man, everything he's been asked to do so far, it certainly seems like he's doing at a high enough level. I've seen him get sideline to sideline. I've seen him make plays in coverage. I've seen him blitz. I've seen him play with much better speed. Looks like he's reacting much quicker than he was a season ago. I think one of my bold predictions was that Tyron Hopper was going to be one of the breakout players on defense, specifically in camp and in preseason. And I still think that there's a very good chance that that comes to fruition. My guess is he racks up tackles in preseason. I bet he plays a lot, and I bet he gets a lot of opportunities in the game. So no, I've really liked what I've seen, and I do think he's taking a step in the right direction in year 2. Joseph says, I really hope Bo stays. He's such a quality football player. Listen, the more that you can do, right? And when you're on that many special teams units and now has some defensive ability and some offensive ability, he's going to have a chance. It's going to be tough. I think there's no question about it. It could end up being a practice squad sort of position. But I know this, if they cut Bo Melton, it's going to be heartbreaking for them. And I know they'll fight tooth and nail to try to keep him on the practice squad and in Green Bay. And I do think he's got a real puncher's chance to make this roster, whether it's as a corner, wide receiver, special teams ace, all of the above. He will definitely be in that conversation when cutdowns come. Jason says, thank you for all the great coverage. Awesome getting such detailed updates every day. Jason, you are more than welcome. Happy to do it. Overjoyed to do it. Lucky to be able to do it. And, you know, again, if you would have told any version of me that I would get to do this and just be able to talk Packers all the time, probably would have never believed you. It's funny, like about 6 months before, maybe it was a little bit longer than that, maybe 8 months before I started doing this full time. When people asked me if I would be able to do this full time, I said, I think I'm closer to scaling back than scaling up, because it just felt like, you know, at some point, you know, kids were getting older and didn't think I was maybe going to have that avenue to do it full time, which meant that probably was going to have to scale it back a little bit. And just very thankful that you know, that it tipped in the opposite direction. And now I get to do this full time. And, you know, it's just when something is such a passion and you get to talk about it and do it, and hopefully that comes across the just pure passion that I have for this team and for this sport and for these players. It's a really, really fun thing to get to do. It doesn't mean that there aren't sometimes 1:30 in the morning where I haven't recorded an episode yet, where it's just like, oh my God, what I would give right now to just be able to go to bed. Or there's definitely moments like that, right? But 99% of the time, it is an overwhelmingly joyful thing to get to do. So I appreciate the opportunity. Kyler says, love the content, Andy. Always a good listen and flow of conversation. Appreciate that, Kyler. Fred, in your live update today, did you say Jennings or Jenkins had a muff snap exchange in practice? I thought you said Jennings, and I'm just a bit curious if he is indeed getting center reps. Thank you. Good question, Fred. I did say Jennings. It was Donovan Jennings. When Trey Hill had all those missed snaps, they've sort of started to move Trey Hill back to guard a little bit and move Donovan Jennings and give him some opportunities at center. So he seemed to have one today. I didn't get to see if it was on the quarterback or the center or exactly what happened, but yes, he has been able to get some reps at center as well, which again, the more versatility, the more that you can do, the more you have on your resume, the better chance you have to make the roster. And we'll see if Donovan Jennings has a chance to make it on the 53 when all is said and done. Also says, I'm rooting for Jennings, and maybe versatility to play center would help. Absolutely. Ralph says, just hope this pass rush is better. That's the $1 million question. And as I've talked about, I wouldn't read too much into it one way or the other. If all of a sudden this pass rush starts dominating and LVN and Clark and Wyatt and Gary and all these guys just start looking unbelievable, I need to see it in games. And if they are, you know, starting a little bit slow and the offensive line looks great, guess what? This is a really good offensive line, especially from a pass pro standpoint. So it doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world either. I'm interested to see what it looks like come the start of regular season, and they really can't do anything in camp or preseason that's going to prove it one way or the other. It's going to take it happening against Detroit in week 1 and then following up against Washington in week 2. We'll find out soon enough, but it's going to take it actually happening consistently in the regular season for anyone to be a believer, and that's when they're going to ultimately have to prove it. So the hope is that they can be better, but we're not going to probably find out here yet for a little bit. Do you see any full house formations with oh, here we go. Do you see any possible full house formations, but with Morgan and the other second round linemen in the backfield? So that would be 7 linemen just blasting. COVID toe, I do not think so. I haven't seen any full house formation, certainly not with 2 extra offensive linemen. It wouldn't surprise me if we got some 6 offensive lineman looks this year with 5, and then either a Jordan Morgan or an Anthony Belton as a 6th, or even a Kadeem Telford or a Travis Glover. I believe we saw Telford this past year did get in on some 6 offensive lineman formations in 2024. So we could see something like that, but I don't think a full house with 2 offensive linemen in the backfield. But hey, if they want to do it, it would be certainly fun to watch. I will say that much. Gary says Golden is going to be Sterling Sharp busy. We'll see. Again, he's still got a lot of the offense and the nuances to pick up, route depth, short motions, long motions, checks, audibles, blocking on the outside, all those sort of things. But the pure natural talent is coming out more and more and more every single day. He's making big plays, and it's been really fun to watch him grow, even through the first 6 days of training camp. I can only imagine as time goes on, hopefully that growth remains exponential for him, but no question about it. It's very obvious why he was a first-round pick. The talent stands out almost immediately. Gary says the radio gig is working well. Well, thank you for that, Gary. Appreciate that. Obviously, I've seen you in the chats on the radio show. For those of you who don't know, check out the Pack a Day radio show. It is on YouTube as well. So every morning, 8 o'clock a.m., if you're saying, you know what, I just need a little bit more Andy in my life, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. The really cool thing with those is I do start with a sort of a main topic, and some of it is a crossover from some of the stuff that we talk about on the podcast, of course. But then we have a 15 to 20 minute segment with, usually, not usually, a great guest every single day. Tomorrow, for example, I got Pete Doherty coming on. So Pete Doherty and I are going to be talking ball for 20 minutes from about 8:20 to 8:40 tomorrow. So make sure you're checking out the Pack a Day radio show as well. We're getting a lot more viewers over on the YouTube page. Our producer, Tommy's doing a great job. If you want to check out those interviews, you can check it out. Just search Pack a Day radio show, and all of those are out there with some great interviews. We get on like Peter Bukowski, Wes Hodkiewicz, Aaron Nagler, Ryan Wood, so many guys on the beats. We just have a ton of great guests. So it's been one of my favorite things of just getting to talk to somebody, and that, like, everyone on the Pack a Day podcast has come on as well. Mark Eckel was on earlier this week, guys that, and gals that I don't get to talk to regularly because they have their show and I do my show, and I don't get to cross paths with Sarah Kelleher or Steve Perhatch or Matt Freilich as often in the podcast world. So getting to talk to those guys, Dusty Evely for 20 minutes on the radio, is amazing as well. So make sure you're checking that out. And it just is another option for you every single day, or at least Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. It's really fun stuff. So make sure to check that out. All right. Last call for questions. We have exhausted our questions here in our members Q&A. I know, obviously, with me doing a lot more live shows, right after practice, there's probably a few less questions than maybe normal when I'm maybe doing these once per week. I will tell you, I've got happy hour coming out tomorrow. There's no practice, so I'm not going to be doing a live practice one, but I do have happy hour at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Then Thursday, immediately following practice, I will be off Friday. So I will not be at practice Friday. I will not be doing a live show right after. I do have Paul Brettel doing a show following practice to get you all the updates from practice. So you're still going to get those updates from somebody who is at practice, and Paul does an incredible job. So looking forward to that. And then I'll be back for family night on Saturday, immediately covering that as well. All right, friends, I guess that is going to do it for us since we have exhausted all of our questions. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you so much for being members. I will see you guys. Fred asked, am I a cat or a dog guy? I'm not. Actually, we don't have any pets in our house. That is not anti-dog. That is not anti-cat. It's just we've got 2 kids and I'm doing things all the time and we are insanely busy, and we have got soccer at all times for the kids. They're in every single sport imaginable. So if we had a pet, it probably would not be fair to the pet. I'll just put it that way. So I like both. I don't have either. But yeah, nothing against either. I'll put it that way. All right, friends. I will see you all very, very soon. Again, no practice tomorrow, but happy hour, 4 p.m. Central Time. I'll see you guys then. And of course, tomorrow's episode, breaking down everything that happened at today's training camp. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.